everybody. I'm Pastor Rick Strawcutter, and this is a videotape that is going to make certain suggestions to you, some practical examples of things that you and I and everybody in this country can do to start to implement Christianity in a practical way in this country. Incidentally, the studio that we're in right now is actually the broadcast studio for Radio Free Lenawee. Maybe you've heard about Radio Free Lenawee. Well, this is where it all takes place. This is one of the, our station, we're proud to tell you, is one of the largest of the low-power broadcasters in the country. And fortunately, we're not the only one. There's lots of people who are starting radio stations. As a matter of fact, this is something you can do in your community in order to spread information. Because as a Christian, really, your primary responsibility, you know, Jesus Christ said, "Go ye therefore, teach all nations, preach the gospel to every creature." That's our primary responsibility, and you as a missionary have a responsibility to spread information and truth. You really ought to consider starting a radio station. What I think we'll do right now, let's go to a clip that CNN and some other guys, some of the TV people did about our radio station here that'll give you a little better insight into what we're talking about in terms of a low-power radio station, and then I'll be right back after this, okay?
The expression. A preacher in Michigan considers himself a rebel. The federal government calls him a pirate.
CNN's Ed Garston has the story of the preacher's fight to send his message over the air and under the radar of authorities.
At 97.7 FM, Radio Free Lenawee.
It's not time and temperature, but time and temperance.
20 minutes before the hour of 8 o'clock, that's exactly what we advocate everybody desire to do. That's take America back. But I tell you, if you think it's going to be done by any other means than the Lord, you'll waste your time.
But 97.7 is not simply a religious radio station. Transmitting at just 95 watts from a tower out back of Reverend Rick Strawcutter's church, it's a station operating without a license, a so-called pirate station. Its message, sometimes religious, usually rebellious.
This song is entitled "We'll Remember in November," but folks, makes you wonder, even if you remember in November, does your vote even count?
The federal government is trying to force Strawcutter, who owns the station, to get a license or shut down. But he has no intention of pulling the plug or doing the paperwork.
There are a lot of small voices like mine that need to be heard in this country. And we feel that in large measure we're being suppressed. And that's not paranoia. That's just recognizing that there's a problem.
In the southern Michigan college town, opinions are strong on whether or not Strawcutter should be cut off.
I think he's a little out of line. I think he should obey the laws just like the rest of us.
I just don't really seem to like the things he has to say.
We practically have no Constitution. There's not much left of it. And I appreciate what he's doing for the community.
Indeed, this broadcasting buccaneer likens himself to another rebel who stood fast for freedom.
It's going to be seen as kind of the Rosa Parks of radio. When Rosa sat on the front seat of the bus, they said, "Rosa, you don't have a license to do this." And Rosa, in effect, said, "I don't need a license to do this."
But the government insists the Reverend Rick Strawcutter does and promises to push on until the only thing heard on 97.7 FM is radio silence. Ed Garston, CNN, Adrian, Michigan.
Okay, now here is what we call the free radio broadcasting packet. And this sells for $50, complete with a videotape, and there's about 100 pages of technical stuff, legal stuff, sources on where you can get transmitters. And folks, believe me, you can have a radio station set up from your home with an investment of less than $800 or $900. Putting out 20 watts of power, reaching a radius of 5-mile radius of your home. Ask yourself, within 5 miles of your home, how many people are there that could tune in to your radio station? Well, there you have it. There's a ready audience. I mean, if you're looking for something you can do, imagine if we had thousands of low-power broadcasters just like you all across the nation, pumping out truth and information. Man, oh man. You know, the New World Order crowd, they've already got the TV and radio stations all tied up. We need to fill in those little low-power niches in there and reach people. we started our radio station with people getting out on the streets with signs that said tune to 97.7 now, and we had like 25 people out on the streets, and we seized our community in one day. We had thousands of listeners just right now. And as we sit here in this studio, I don't know if you can see these lights popping up and down here, but we are broadcasting right now from Adrian, Michigan. Matter of fact, let me turn up some volume. Okay.
Gene from Mission.
Okay, you can hear that. That is the voice of Lieutenant Colonel Bo Greitz
Gene, you out there?
being carried on Radio Free Lenawee right here in Adrian, Michigan. And we'll show you how you can put up a satellite dish. That's something else you might want to consider getting. You know these big 10-foot dishes that you see in people's backyards? That's what we're talking about by a satellite dish, not the little 18-inch jobbies, the big 10-footers. You need to get one of those, and frankly, you can get them for almost free. I mean, there are people who bought them 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, don't even use them anymore, and they're kind of glad for you to, you know, just come pick them up. Look in your shopping guide newspapers. Sometimes you can get them for as cheap as $200. You can buy them brand new, a complete setup for as little as $700 or $800. Get the satellite dish. That'll connect you to the ability to pick up programming like Bo Greitz and American Freedom and Republic Radio and Truth Radio and other networks that are out there, and that'll give you stuff that you can broadcast, because many will say, well, they wouldn't mind having a radio station, but they just don't feel like they're prepared to, you know, what would I put out? What would I? Don't worry. There's all kinds of stuff up there coming down from 22,000 miles in the air that you can pick up and you can broadcast. And so there's something you can do in a practical way to be a Christian in these last days and do something that is powerful and has impact, and I believe has the potential to turn this country around. Okay? Now, as long as we're talking about communications, here is another little item that you need to add to your little arsenal. This is a shortwave receiver. Now, this happens to be a Radio Shack receiver. You can get them anywhere. I'm very happy with this one. By the way, this one also has a little cassette recorder, so that when you're there's a lot of good stuff that you can pick up on shortwave, and we are going to supply you with a list of frequencies, and we'll give you a little better shot of this. Okay, so you can take a look at this, and you can actually read the actual frequencies for picking up broadcasts, such as, let me just give you a few here. We got Jeff Baker, Bo Greitz, Pete Peters, Stan Johnson, Chuck Harder, Irwin Schiff, Mark Kornkein, John Stadmiller, Clay Douglas, and it just goes on and on and on. People that you can pick up on shortwave. And I feel like that it's very important for us as Christians to establish alternative communications means other than television and local radio, because first of all, they're not reliable. Secondly, their programming is mostly planned and canned. You know, there's not very much that's original and that is really liberating that you're going to get on TV or radio. And as long as we're talking a little bit about shortwave here, let me mention the fact that you ought to also consider getting a ham transceiver. Now, here's a magazine. It's called Amateur Electronic Supply. By the way, if you wanted to get a copy of their catalog, their toll-free number is 800-558-0411. Get one of these catalogs. Now, it's a little technical. If radio is a little, if this is new to you, don't hesitate to get this catalog anyway. But in here, you can order ham transceivers. What I mean by a transceiver, I'm talking about a unit that transmits and receives on the shortwave bands. If you have a friend who's an amateur radio operator or a ham operator, get a hold of that person, have them help you get set up. A little transceiver like this, you can get them used for maybe $500-600. Put up an antenna in your backyard, a little dipole antenna, hardly costs you anything for the antenna. You can communicate literally all over the world, surely all over the United States, with just 100 watts of power. And it is absolutely fantastic. If there was an emergency, if there was a major crisis, chaos came down, you would certainly thank God that you had alternative communications capacity. So you need to consider getting a satellite dish. You need to be a low-power FM broadcaster, if at all possible. And you need to get a ham radio transceiver, a low band, or what's called a high-frequency transceiver. All right. more information on that is available from us, so just let us know if you need more specific information. I'm just trying to seed some ideas out here for you right now. Of course, one of the most important things you can do as a missionary with facts is these little tapes right here. You need to have a good supply of these tapes and share them with everybody that you know and pass them out. You know, take them to work and tell the guy, say, hey, Mac, I got a fantastic tape I want you to take a look at. It's just 28 minutes long. Take a look at it, bring it back to work tomorrow and tell me what you think. If the tape turns them on, they're in. And if they're not interested, well, then just give it to somebody else that's living and breathing and might have, you know, an IQ above plant life. That's what we're looking for. We're looking for people that we can reach. The more people you reach, if you make it a goal to pass this tape out to at least 10 people a week, 50 or 100 people a month, well, your missionary efforts are really going to grow, and that's what we want to do. We want to reach thousands and, in the end, millions of people with the information that we're talking about here. All right? Also, you need to get connected with certain publications. Now, I'm just going to mention a few of these. This is by no means all of them or, you know, exclusively the very best or anything. The Spotlight is a weekly publication out of Washington, D.C., and it carries a lot of good news and information that is not carried, obviously, by the mainstream. Oh, incidentally, Albert, you can get a shot of this. I didn't bring my radio in. Here is a shortwave receiver that is a crank radio. This is true. It's got a little built-in generator, and you wind up this crank, and it runs without batteries, and it receives shortwave, and you can order these from a number of different sources. Let's see, what's the source on this one here? It's called Dutch Guard by Mail, Department SP-12, Post Office Box 411687, Kansas City, Missouri 64141, and I think they sell them for $100. Isn't that what it is? $99 and plus postage. Well, anyway, it's a wind-up, so it's a survival kind of radio. And but Spotlight, you need to subscribe to this, and we're going to have on the screen the address where you can order a Spotlight subscription. I think it's about $40 a year or something. Here's another publication. It's called Media Bypass. And as the name implies, it bypasses the establishment planned canned media. This is a publication you really ought to subscribe to. It comes out monthly. Free American is another one. A great magazine that you ought to subscribe to. I think this is only $30 a year. It comes out monthly. And this particular issue is talking about Aaron, one of the articles is about Aaron Russo, who's running for governor of Nevada. Another great idea. You need to run for public office, friend. Criminal Politics magazine. This is a really good one. I forget now exactly how much it is, but if you call the people at 1-800-543-0486, give these folks a call. Tell them you heard about the magazine by way of this fax tape. Maybe they even got a special deal for you. Here's some good folks at Jubilee Newspaper. Their address is P.O. Box 310, Mid-Pines, California, 95345. Give them a call at 209-742-6397. They're good people. Establish communications contacts and cross-networking. Okay, you need to get some hard copy stuff here. Get on the internet. If you have a computer and you're not internet, you don't have a modem, you need to get a modem, get set up on the internet. Incidentally, you can make contact with us at our website. Our website is www.proclaimliberty.com. And that's where we are located, and you can make more contact with us and get more information that way as well. Okay, so we talked about radio, we talked about communications, some of the publications you need to subscribe to. Now, let's talk a little bit about how to protect yourself. This happens to be a common law trust manual. Whatever property that you have, be they automobiles, real estate for sure, anything like that, quite frankly, we have enemies in this country. All of us as Americans do. You want to take your property and put it in what's called a pure common law trust, so that it is out of your control. You can be the general manager of these trusts, but the actual ownership of your property needs to be in a trust, so that if you're sued or if the government decides to harass you or IRS wants to try and rip you off and steal everything you got, you don't have anything to steal. And there's a really neat story it's told about trust to illustrate how valuable these things are. The Kennedys had an incident one time where one of their dogs had bit a guy. Well, this guy figured, man, I'm going to sue the Kennedys. I'm going to get me a share of their wealth, right? So the lawsuit proceeded, and sure enough, the judge or the jury, whatever the case was, ruled that the Kennedys had been negligent in allowing their dog to bite this guy, and so they got an award. Unfortunately, for the guy that got bit, the dog was owned by a trust, and so the only thing he could get was the contents of the trust, and this particular trust only had one content, the dog. So the judge says, buddy, the dog that bit you, you now own the dog. And that's it. He got nothing more. So trusts are what the rich people have always used, the elite have always used to protect themselves, and we can do the same thing. Now, if you want information on setting up a trust, I recommend that you get a hold of a group called Freedom Bound. F-R-E-E-D-O-M, Bound, B-O-U-N-D, and that is Brent Johnson. You can call them toll-free at 888-385-3733, or you can write to them at 2101 Main Street, 18-1776, Baker City, Oregon. The zip is 97814. They will do a complete trust for you for $850. It's a tremendous deal, and the people are competent. They'll give you you can have a consultation with them by phone for $75 an hour. If you have a consultation, that $75 is applied towards your trust. You can get an info packet free of charge from them. So if you want to just call the toll-free number, get the free info pack from them about a trust, you can do that. Here's something interesting too. I just mentioned this as an aside, where you can get an international driving permit recognized in over 200 countries. So if you've been looking for a way to maybe get rid of your driver's license for one reason or another, I don't know an awful lot about these international driving permits, except that they are recognized and they do work. And you might want to get a hold of these people. Right Way Travel Association, 8175 South Virginia Suite, 850-402 Reno, Nevada, 89511. They have a phone number at 702-788-4477. Okay, moving right along. The year 2000 is straight ahead of us, and Y2K is likely to cause tremendous problems in this country. Let me tell you, one of the problems recently brought to light to me is this. Even if there was nothing to Y2K, if as few as 1% of the people in this country decide to go to the bank and withdraw their savings just in case something happens, those 1% will precipitate an absolute collapse in the banking system in this country. If as few as 1 or 2% of the people decide to sell their stock holdings just in case something happens at the year 2000, they will, by doing that, precipitate a collapse in the stock market. It just looks like to me, folks, that a massive collapse is on its way, whether we want it or not. We're probably going to create it, because everybody I'm talking to, and I'm telling them, get your money out of banks, sell your stocks, put it in gold and silver just in case. Some people are also investing in lead with brass casings. Whatever precious metals you want to buy wouldn't be a bad idea. All right, so I do mention that to protect yourself. Now, when all this chaos comes down, you're also going to want to eat. I want to recommend to you that you get some storable foods. Now, you don't have to spend an awful lot of money on storable foods. Where am I looking here? Okay, here we go. Here's some people at Millennium Foods. These folks have one of the biggest, most efficient distribution networks for storable foods. And if you want to get a hold of Millennium, you can give them a call. It's area code 801-375-2264. They have a fax number, 801-356-1523. Millennium Food Reserves. They have all kinds of, most of their stuff is canned stuff, okay, like this. Now, there are companies where you can get MREs, and now these guys may have MREs. Maybe I shouldn't speak for them. They may also have MREs. Here's some MREs. That's a meal ready to eat. This particular one I got from Summit Foods, Post Office Box 1047, Mullins, South Carolina, 29574. They got a toll-free number, 800-362-7028. I have no personal connection to these people, so we don't personally make any money. We want to get you in contact with direct sources, though, where you can buy as cheaply as possible. You'll also find that if you go to your grocery store, sometimes up in this area, we've got these big, oh, Albert, what's the name of these places where you get all this junk free, really, really cheap, where you buy in bulk up there by Anna?
Like Sam's.
Sam's, some of these clubs you join, Sam's Wholesale Club and so on. You can go in there and you can buy beans, like 50 pounds of beans, already shrink wrapped in 1 pound packages, 15 bean mix. This stuff is relatively cheap. It's the kind of thing where you can buy 30 bucks worth a week or a month or whatever your budget allows. Bean store, really good, and they're high in protein, good food value. And so you can start by getting beans, rice, stuff like that, to start storing up some food, because we very well may need it. You know, the scripture says that a wise man sees trouble ahead and prepares himself. Fools plod on and are destroyed. You're no fool. You don't want to be destroyed. So you want some food. And it might be good also to live in a kind of rural area. If you live in the heart of New York City, I urge you to make some kind of plans to get out of town. Because when it all comes collapsing down, man, I mean to tell you, these big metropolitan cities are going to become, well, I think frightening places to live. Okay. Something that you ought to get connected with these people right here, the Fully Informed Jury Association. They put out a paper called the FIJA Activists, and FIJA stands for Fully Informed Jury Association. And you want to, let me see if I can give you their address here. Oh, yeah. Post Office Box 59, Helmville, Montana, 59843. Get a hold of these people here, send them an offering, and they'll start sending you their FIJA paper. They're good people to support. Why would you want to support them? Because they're helping to educate people all over this United States to the fact of jury nullification. Now, this, to my mind, is one of the most powerful things that you can do as a Christian. You need to get on a jury if you possibly can. Either the grand jury or a trial jury. A grand jury is the jury where the prosecutor has to go to convince them that he should have the power to go after somebody, all right? So if you can get on a grand jury, you know, look over everything really, really, really close. And if anything looks suspect at all, be sure and not return an indictment, okay? This is a way that you can set your fellow man, your fellow Christian, free from government tyranny. And more, as we look at it, folks, the government is out, you know. Somebody said, just because you're paranoid doesn't mean they're not out to get you. Well, there's some bad stuff that's going on here, all in the name of government and law enforcement and war on drugs. And I mean, you can't hardly do a cash transaction anymore without somebody looking at you like you must be into drugs or something, because you're dealing in cash. I remember when I was a little kid, we had a guy, Ernie Dills, across the street, always paid cash for all of his automobiles. I mean cash. He'd go in and he'd buy a brand new car every year or two, and he'd plunk down whatever it was, $3,000 to $4,000 cash. You can get a brand new car back then for $3,000 or $4,000. He always paid cash. People respected people who paid cash. Today, if you walk around with $3,000 or $4,000, they think you're some kind of a crook. Well, you and I can change some of this, okay, by being very astute jurors and getting on juries. You know, some people say, well, I don't want to serve on a jury because it just takes too much time and I just don't want to be bothered. Friend, wake up. One of the highest callings you can have as a Christian is to be placed on a jury, particularly a trial in which the government is prosecuting someone. All right? What are you going to do once you get on that jury? Well, I'm going to share a little bit of law with you here from, this is, you know, U.S. law, U.S. Supreme Court speaking here, to show you that you have an absolute right to acquit, and that is to find defendants not guilty, even if the law that they're charged under, even if it appears that they're actually guilty. Let me give you an example of how this might work. A number of years ago in Detroit, Michigan, just right out our back door here in Adrian, there was a crack house in a neighborhood, and all the neighbors hated the crack house. I mean, they were bringing all kinds of vice and all kinds of trash into their neighborhood all the time, all hours of the night. They called the police. The police didn't do anything about it, didn't seem to be able to do anything about it. Finally, these two brothers said, we'll do something about it. So they waited until this old crack house, and this crack house was a dilapidated, fallen down kind of building. There were no mortgages on it. Nobody seemed to really own it. It had gone back to the city in taxes and so on. And these guys said, we'll fix it. They filled the thing with gasoline. They torched it. They burned that crack house to the ground. And all the neighbors were applauding it. They loved it. Great, the crack house is gone. But the two brothers got arrested and charged with arson. When they went to trial, they got on the witness stand and they said, if absolutely, we burned the thing to the ground. We called the police, they wouldn't do anything about it, and we've got children in this neighborhood, we got our kids here, we got a future here, and nobody else was doing anything about it, so we did something about it. We burned that crack house to the ground, we improved the neighborhood, we're glad we did it. Well, the prosecutor said to the jury, says, folks, this is a piece of cake. Here are the elements of arson, the intentional burning of a dwelling place of another. These guys admit that they burned the building down. You have no choice but to come back with a guilty verdict. Well, the jury went back in that jury room for about 5-10 minutes, and they came back and they said, not guilty. The jury said these guys did the right thing. Okay? For whatever reason, the jury wanted to arrive at the decision that they did. They said, we are not going to put two men in prison that did everything that they could to improve their neighborhood, and the cops wouldn't do anything, and that was their rationale. These guys have not broken the law, even though the law and the facts combined together normally would have been an easy conviction. But the jury, thank God for this jury, they did this thing, the sort of thing that you can do as a Christian. You get on a jury, and you can vote not guilty even if the facts. Now, here's what happens. The judges are the biggest corrupters of the rights and liberties and freedoms of people in this country. The judges are the ones that are going to tell the jury, hey, you folks here, you listen to me. I'll tell you what the law is. You just decide what the facts are. And so if the judge says this is what the law says about arson, you decide the facts. Well, the facts are these guys burned down the building. You combine the two together, you got a slam dunk conviction every single time. But these jurors, evidently somebody on that jury knew that we don't have to follow the instructions of the judge. We are the judges of the law as well as the facts. And they came back with this not guilty verdict. Incidentally, as we make this tape, today's CBS News this morning said that the jury that convicted Terry Nichols, you remember he was the alleged co-conspirator with Timothy McVeigh, and this is all covered in this book here. The jury came back the first time, the first vote that they took on that trial was 10-2 not guilty. Did you realize that? 10-2 not guilty. And yet somehow in the process of the deliberations, they turned that all the way around and they got a conviction of 12-0 for guilty. It's just unthinkable, folks. I don't know how in the world you can have 10-2 for not guilty and somehow not get a not guilty verdict there. There's something really weird and strange going on with this trial. Matter of fact, the whole Oklahoma City bombing thing is a convoluted affair that not a few people think the government or some shadow elements within the government were involved in. But at any rate, you see the value of jury nullification and jury education. Nikki Deutschman, who was the jury foreman, remember how she came out after that verdict, even though it was a guilty verdict? First thing she said was that there were problems with the government's case, and the government botched their prosecution. The government did not really prove their case, even though they came back guilty. This let us all know that jury education is working. Jury nullification is catching on. The work of the FIJA activist people is working. And facts, what you're doing in viewing this tape and spreading this to all your friends, neighbors, relatives, everybody you know, is having an impact too. Let me read to you some cases here. You can follow along on your screen that support the fact of what I'm talking about here in terms of jury nullification. The charge to the jury in the first jury trial before the Supreme Court of the United States illustrates the true power of the jury. In the February term of 1794, the Supreme Court conducted a jury trial in the case of the state of Georgia versus Brailsford. It said, it is presumed that juries are the best judges of facts. It is, on the other hand, presumed that the courts are the best judges of law. But still, both objects are within your power of decision. You have a right to take upon yourselves to judge both and to determine the law as well as the fact in controversy. State of Georgia versus Brailsford. Now, what this is saying is that you have a right to decide whether the law is being applied correctly in that particular case. You may feel like the law is a good law, but as it's being applied to this particular defendant, it's a bad law. It's a misapplication. So you have a right to come back not guilty. You recall in our little earlier history here in America, we used to have a thing called prohibition. Okay? And what was prohibition? Prohibition was all about the fact that it was illegal to consume, produce, and distribute alcohol in the United States of America. That later was overturned with another amendment to the Constitution, which did away with the previous Prohibition Amendment. Remember that? The reason was that juries in America refused to convict people of drinking alcohol. It just became a no-win situation for the government, and they said, well, you know, we're trying to prosecute these people, and the juries are coming back not guilty, not guilty. Well, that was jury nullification, because they were coming back not guilty, even though the facts and the law combined together would have normally brought a conviction of a guilty. It should be easy for people to sit on like IRS cases. When somebody's being prosecuted for either willful failure to file or something else connected with taxes, it should be easy for Christians particularly to sit on those juries and vote not guilty, not guilty, not guilty, and send a message to this government that we, the people, are fed up with all this nonsense that's being crammed down our throats, and bring back a sense of righteousness to this country. But at any rate, the power's in your hands. You can vote any way you want, but I do want you to know that you have the right to determine the law as well as the facts. We recognize, as appellants urge, the undisputed power of the jury to acquit even if its verdict is contrary to law as given by the judge and contrary to the evidence. This is a power that must exist as long as we adhere to the general verdict in criminal cases, for the courts cannot search the minds of the jurors to find the basis upon which they judge. Did you hear that? If you vote not guilty, this jury that tried Terry Nichols, if they would have come back not guilty, it would have shocked the nation. It would have sure sent a message to this government we've got today. But the jurors would not be in trouble. They cannot be reviewed. Their minds cannot be searched to determine why did you come back not guilty. All they've got to do is just come back not guilty. If the jury feels that the law under which the defendant is accused is unjust, or that the exigent circumstances justify the actions of the accused, or for any reason which appears to their logic or passion, the jury has the power to acquit, and the courts must abide by that decision. That is U.S. versus Moylan, 417 F. 2nd, 1002. This is a case from 1969. All right. By the way, you should have a citizen rule book in your package that was sent to you, so you can read that for yourself and share that with people. Folks, try to get on a jury. And when you get on that jury, if at all possible, acquit defendants who are simply the victims of government prosecutions, whatever it might be. All right? Okay. We talked a little bit about jury nullification. In this country, we imprison more of our own people than any other country in the world. We used to say we imprison more of our own people than any other country in the free world, because a few years ago it was assumed that the Soviet Union imprisoned more of their people per capita than we did. It's no longer the case. Folks, this sounds bizarre. In the land of the free and the home of the brave, we have more of our own people in prisons than any other country in the world. You could be next, sir, madam, whoever you are. You have absolutely no idea what might be coming down the road against you, and it will more than likely be a government type of prosecution that's going to put you into jail. Matter of fact, it most certainly will be a government prosecution. We have a method of responding to our people being harassed by the government. It is called the telephone brigade. All right? Here's how it works. Let's say, for instance, that you're driving down the road and you happen to respect the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States, and you keep and you bear an arm. You have a pistol in your pocket or in your glove box. And any rate, let's say, for instance, you were arrested and charged with carrying a concealed weapon. Okay? Now, I'm sure you and I both agree that is protected by the Constitution. But we have a reckless runaway government that wants to disarm this country, take away all of our guns. So you stand upon that right and you're going to keep your gun. But meanwhile, you are locked up. You don't want to be in jail, do you? Of course not. So what we do is we notify everyone within facts that you are in jail. And we give them 3 or 4 phone numbers, and we urge everyone who's a part of facts to begin calling those phone numbers. And we mean you start calling in the morning, and you call all day and all night. You call as often as you possibly can. You call, and you call, and you call. And you keep calling. Because when you call, what numbers are you going to call? Well, the numbers that you're going to call, you're going to call the judge's number. You're going to call the sheriff's department. You're going to call the prosecutor's phone number. And you're going to make inquiries as to, a typical call might kind of go like this. Hello, is this Judge Courtney's office? Yes, I understand that there is a Joe Schmo who's under arrest currently in your county. He's been arrested for carrying a concealed weapon. I just wonder if you could tell me something about the case and how this happened to come about. Well, yeah, I understand that, but I'm just calling. I'm just curious. I heard about this, and yes, I realize you're in Texas. I'm in another state, and well, it's not really important who I am, but I'm interested in knowing what's going on. I mean, the Second Amendment of the Constitution, Just talk. Keep the phone line tied up. Now, it is important that you call all of these numbers. Call the Sheriff's Department. Hello, is this the Maricopa Sheriff's Department? Yes. I understand that you have Joe Schmo in custody at this time. Is that correct? And what is the charge he's being held on? Mm-hmm. And can you tell me, has he been allowed to see an attorney? Mm-hmm. Is he being fed? Does he have access to a newspaper? Mm-hmm. Do you happen to know anything about his religious affiliation? Do you happen to know blah, 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 blah? Just talk about anything. Say, hey, I understand you guys have a good baseball team this year. How's it doing? Anything that ties up the telephone. Keep the phone going. In time, you'll find that when you call, you'll get busy tones. Keep dialing even if you get busy tones. If you happen to reach the Sheriff's Department, they say, get off these phones, we can't use these phones, and they hang up on you, just dial it again and say, listen, I just called, we got disconnected. Keep those phone lines ringing and going. We had a situation one time when a guy was arrested. All we had was 10 people to do this. With 10 people, we absolutely shut down the courthouse and the Sheriff's Department, which is exactly what some people feel. Now, I'm not advocating this, and I'm not telling you necessarily to do this, but there's people who feel like that we're down to this, folks. The only way we have to, as it were, fight back against government tyranny is to use the means that we have, and the telephone brigade sure works. Now, these telephone calls must not be harassing phone calls. You must call with the sincere intent of wanting to just check on Joe Schmo. You have an absolute right to check on Joe, whoever he or she might be. Josephine, maybe. And when we put out these numbers, we are concerned about this person's well-being. We want to make sure they are not mistreated. We want these people to know that people are watching the situation all over the United States of America. And in a day or two, Joe Schmo is either going to have reasonable bond and is going to be released to his own recognizance, or something's got to give. Because the Sheriff's Department, the county courthouse, the prosecutor's office, they simply must use their phones. And if we have them entirely, completely tied up, they can't use those phones. We've got to establish a principle in this country that if government arrests, persecutes, harasses our people in any way, shape, or form unreasonably, then we're going to be calling. We're going to be inquiring about this. I heard a story about we used to have some gypsies who would come through this area every now and then. And these gypsies they'd shoplift and do all kinds of bad stuff. Now, if you happen to be a gypsy, I'm not trying to throw off on you, but they get caught shoplifting, and they put them in jail. I mean to tell you, these gypsies, their women would go down to the sheriff's department to check on their husbands and boyfriends, and this is the truth. These women would urinate on the floor. I mean, they would just stand there and urinate. They defecate. They did all kinds of stuff that absolutely ran the authorities up a wall. You know what happened? They just finally say, whoever you got here, release them and get them out of here. Get these gypsies out of town. Well, that's kind of a variation of the phone brigade, okay? We're not suggesting you go and urinate on the... Don't urinate on the telephone. But anyway, there's more than one way to skin a cat, they used to tell me. And the telephone brigade certainly works. So when you get our newsletters, and you'll be getting newsletters from Fax, when it features an article, or if you get a postcard, and if you're on the fax, if you have a fax phone number, you want to make sure we've got your fax number. We'll instantly fax you updates on, who's in jail, who's being arrested, who's being harassed, and what you can do about it. Okay, we're back. Some other suggestions that you could, some things you could do. Number one, you want to be sure, if you have children, small children particularly, you want to start homeschooling. And on the screen here, we're going to have some addresses for you to look at where you can order some homeschooling material. Oftentimes people will tell me, say, well, I just really don't feel qualified to teach my children. There are situations where I've seen parents that were so illiterate and so ignorant, I agree, they can't do it. But if you're reasonably intelligent, you have any kind of education at all, and your heart is right with God, and you want your children to be spared the anguish of being put into the public school system, believe me, you can teach your children. A lot of average folk are homeschooling their kids, and these kids are doing tremendously, okay? So you want to be sure and consider that. Additionally, you ought to run for public office. Run for sheriff, run for county commission, run for Congress, Senate, anything. You say, well, man, how could I possibly win? That's not the point. You're not running to win. You want to run for office so that you've got a platform from which to speak about, the rights of Americans, but Christians that are being violated by Big Brother, that you're gonna stand against those violations. You're gonna stand up for the Constitution. You're gonna stand up for biblical values, and whatever your platform is, and run for some kind of public office. And if we had thousands and thousands of people simply running, you will get television time locally. You'll get radio interviews. You get opportunities to make a way. Additionally, something that you can do is write letters to the editor. Now, when you write a letter to the editor, all right, there's a couple rules you just got to scrupulously observe in order to be effective as a letter writer to the editor. Rule number one, keep your letter down to about 3 or 4 sentences. Yeah, you heard me right. A little letter to the editor. Ask yourself, open up your newspaper, and when you see the letters to the editor, do you read the ones that are 52 columns long? Yada yada is trying to tell everything he knows? You don't read that junk. Nobody reads those things. But which ones? You read the little ones, don't you? Where you've just got a simple statement to make. Simple statements such as, to the editor, I am excited to know that as a juror, I can decide the law as well as the facts, and that I can disregard the instructions of the judge. I learned this from da-da-da-da-da, signed Joe Schmo. Okay? Short, to the point, succinct, communicates a thought. Everybody needs to be writing letters to the editor all the time. A letter might say, I recently heard on the news that the jury that convicted Terry Nichols originally voted 10-2 to find him not guilty. What's going on in America? Simple as that. Just a short, concise statement that will cause other people to start thinking, okay? And you might also form a local group okay? And sign your letter as the president of the People's Council, the People's Freedom Council, the Christian Freedom Council, something like that. And some newspapers would even allow you to include your phone number so that people can feed back to you and make contact with you, because we need to increase our numbers. Is what we got to have. The other side's got all the control. We want the control back in the hands of the people, the grassroots, okay? So, letters to the editor, form a local group. We are establishing a telephone hotline where you can call in and get news updates. Right now, we used to maintain a 900 hotline. We may reactivate that. And at this moment in time, while we're taping this, we don't have the phone number to give you. If you're getting a later version of this tape, there may be a number that's scrolling across the screen right now. If it is, well, that means that is the updated phone number where you can call anytime you want, 24 hours a day, and get updates on what's going on in the country. Right. So that's basically it for this this basic tape on practical applications of Christianity. Number one of which, observe the golden rule, and that is do unto others as you'd have them do unto you. Become a juror. Do anything you can do to get on a jury. And by the way, getting on the jury sometimes is not that hard. Staying on the jury can be. If you get on a jury, you've got to really play dumb, okay? The judges and the prosecutors don't want intelligent people on a jury. So if you give any indication or any signs that you're a student, that you study the Constitution, that you've got any brains at all, you're going to be off that jury. So please play dumb. I remember going to a trial one time where some people were on trial for protesting abortion, and this is back in the days when they would just lay themselves on the sidewalk and up against the doors and would stop people from going in and getting abortions. These people were on trial for trespass, criminal trespass. I couldn't believe it. The first jury that they impaneled, they had 6 people on this jury, and the judge asked the question, do any of you jurors have any feeling about abortion one way or the other, whether it's moral, immoral, if it's murder or anything like that? Do you have any thoughts that way? 3 of the jurors raised their hand. And this one lady says, oh, I'm a born-again Christian, and I believe that abortion is murder, and I really don't think I could sit on this jury and be unbiased. The judge said, thank you very much. He excused her. Next one. Yes, I also believe that abortion is murder, and I just don't feel like I could be unbiased in this trial. He's off. Eventually, they whittled the jury down to 6 people who could say that they didn't believe abortion was murder. And you know what kind of verdict they came back with? They convicted these people of criminal trespass, and some of them got jail time. Folks, we got to educate people. Those so-called Christians, and I don't want to bring their Christianity into question, but I guess I am. I'm bringing more or less their intelligence into question. These jurors need to sit there dumb as a post. They need to do like Rahab did when the children of Israel were coming into Jericho. You remember the story? How that the spies found Rahab, and they told her, they said, if you hide us and don't tell the authorities, we're going to spare you and your family when we come in and take this city. So what happened? The authorities came to Rahab and they said, hey, you had some Israelites in here, and we know that they're we want to know where they're at. She said, well, they were here, but they went that way. Sure enough, they're gone, man. Hurry, you might be able to catch them. Meanwhile, she had them hid upstairs, didn't she? Read it for yourself. And that woman was included in the genealogy and the lineage of Christ. Even though she told a big fibber, she lied, didn't she? How about when Moses was born? There was a law in Egypt that said that all male Hebrew children are to be aborted, so to speak. When they're born, they are to die. They didn't kill Moses, did they? And when he was born, the midwives told the authorities, oh, listen, we would be killing these babies, but these Hebrew women, they're real lively, and they just had these babies before we even get there. What'd they do? They lied. And the scripture says that God blessed them and gave them houses. I'm going to tell you something, folks. You are under absolutely no moral obligation to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth to people who are the satanic enemy of Christ. Now that may sound strong, but I'm telling you folks, we are in a warfare for the very survival of this nation, our families, our home, our children, our church. You want to be a hero? Learn how to look at the judge and put a real dumb look on your face. If you were on a jury that was going to decide the fate of some abortion foes, and the judge says, does anyone here have a feeling about abortion one way or the other which would cause you to have a bias? You better just sit there and say, no, not me. No, I'm safe, Judge. I'm dumb as a post. Get on that jury, stay on that jury, and as soon as you start deliberating, that's where you preach to the choir. That's where you tell the people, folks, what's going on here is a travesty. There is no way in the world I'm going to put those Christians in jail because they're stopping abortion. We're going to let them go. We're going to find them not guilty so that they can get back on the street and shut down some more clinics. That's exactly the way that works. So, get on a jury, stay on the jury, be dumb. Remember, and read for yourself the instances that I've mentioned about Rahab, about the Hebrew midwives. They lied, folks, and God blessed them. You know, the commandment that says, thou shalt not bear false witness, that has to do with lying under oath against your own brethren. That's another Bible study. We may get into it at a later date. I'm telling you what, if the authorities come to me and they want to know where you are, if I know you're in my house, don't you expect me to tell them that I know where you are. And you better learn, get your mind straight. There are people that are for Christ and there are people that are anti-Christ. There are people who are the seed of Adam and his people, and there are people that are a seed of Satan, and they naturally do that which is evil. And many of them find themselves in government. And they do evil, bad, wicked things to good people. And ultimately, we imprison more of our own people than any other nation in the world. Folks, this has got to stop someplace. And hopefully it's going to stop with you if you can get yourself onto a jury. So jury education is one of the primary things you do, practically speaking, as a Christian. Additionally, we are enlisting you as a prayer partner. We need you to pray every single day for the restoration and the salvation of this nation and of our families. We need you to pray for the people who are active in facts. We need you to pray for one another. All right? Now I'm going to share a piece of scripture with you here. Right? We're going to go to 2 Chronicles 7 and verse number 14. All righty? If my people, which are called by my name, shall humble themselves and pray and seek my face and turn from their wicked ways, then will I hear from heaven and will forgive their sin and will heal their land. All right? Would you simply pray that prayer? And if you're not a praying person, this is how you can start. You can start by praying this and do it just like this. Say, Almighty God, I am one of the people called by your name, Christian. I want to humble myself. I want to confess my sins and my faults before you. I am praying now, Lord, and I want to seek your face. I want to turn from ways that are wicked within me, thoughts that I have that are impure, thoughts that I have that are wrong in their motive. Father, give me your mind and your way of thinking. Please hear from heaven and forgive my sin, forgive the sin of our family, forgive. Job prayed for his own family, thinking that maybe they had sinned. He prayed for them. You can pray for your loved ones and your friends. Please, God, heal our land, heal our families, heal our churches, raise up a mighty end-time revival, and pray that way. Would you pray that way every day? Pray this prayer. every day. We will get results. Scripture says in Mark chapter number 11 that we shall have whatsoever we say. Let me turn there quickly. All right. Mark chapter number 11 and verse number 22. Jesus Christ said, have faith in God. For verily I say unto you, that whosoever shall say unto this mountain, be thou removed, and be thou cast into the sea, and shall not doubt in his heart, but shall believe that those things which he saith shall come to pass, he shall have whatsoever he says. And so start saying this. Start declaring everywhere, greater is he that's in me than he that is in this world. We are going to have victory. Facts Church is going to change the nation. We are going to have righteousness in our public schools. We're going to have righteousness in our government. We are going to win. We are making forward progress. We are winning. Good things are happening. Hallelujah. Just start saying these. The scripture said, you shall have whatsoever he saith. If there's something bad coming your way, say, I reject this in the name of Jesus Christ. Speak to that mountain. I declare that this too shall pass. Good days are ahead. We're in a jam today, but we're getting out of this jam as we speak in Jesus' name. And speak it into existence. I'm telling you, Jesus Christ said, have faith in God. We can move mountains. We can change this nation, ladies and gentlemen. I believe it with all my heart. So do everything you can in a practical sense to have impact. All right? Form that local group. And incidentally, you can reach people on a local basis. Another little way that I forgot. Let's say you're having a special meeting somewhere. You've got a room at the library and you want to invite people that want to come in and see a videotape or something like that. Run off some handbills, and you could go down to like where the newspaper stands are. Put 50 cents in, open up the USA Today, and stuff one in every single one of those USA Todays, one of those little flyers. Do the same thing with your local newspaper. Oh, I know. They won't like it, but this is a warfare. And the rules of engagement have changed. We've got to reach people. One way or another, we've got to reach people. So there is a way that some people have used to reach people. You could also, we saw a fellow, and I thought I had a picture of this van. If I can find it, it'll be here on the screen. He had professionally lettered on his van the message that no jury is bound to enforce an unconstitutional law. Okay? Simple message. Everywhere he drives that van, that message goes out there. Take your fax info tapes. Get these. They're $30 per 10. You get 10 for $30. Get 10 of them, 50 of them, get 100 of them. Make these things work for you. Be sure to put, by the way, your 10-digit number right here so that when a person calls us and wants to get in fax, they'll get your number. All right? Get your shortwave receiver, get a satellite dish, get a radio station going, whatever you do, get going. God bless you. We are winning.